I feel financially, I think in the long run, if you really look at the numbers, you make more if you do it my way.
So this is the Real Millionaire Investor Podcast. I'm Ben Magny, and you're my lovely longtime friend of Meghan Panek.
Yes.
How long have we known each other? Do you remember at all? Maybe 20 years or something like that, 15?
Yeah.
But we've been working together for like 5.
Right.
When I became a realtor, because my background is as an investor. We actually kind of have opposite stories, because you've been a realtor forever.
Right.
And then you started buying properties.
Right.
I was an investor, and then I became a realtor.
Exactly.
So one of the main reasons that I want to interview people like yourself, when people think about the term millionaire, they think of Ferraris and Rolexes and very Instagrammable lifestyles.
Right.
That is not what most millionaires are. It's us, right? It's a person who's, where I don't know if you think that if you ever think of yourself that way, but
I don't. But
I know you own real estate.
Right.
So reality, right? I think that if more people understood that all around us there are just normal people who like work their butts off, and 5, 10, 15, 25 years down the road, and they're in a way better condition
Yes.
than the people who we know who have Rolexes and a lot of debt.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Have you heard of, there's a book called The Millionaire Next Door?
Yeah.
Have you read it?
Yeah.
I love that book.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I think that your face could be on the cover of that, right? Maybe mine too. But
Right.
like the idea of someone that people don't know, they're successful.
Yeah.
So then the people who want to be successful, who do they see? They see the people, the bling, right?
Yeah.
But the person with the bling has a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had this discussion about our clients
Yeah.
who, what's actually happening in their environment is different from what it looks like.
Yes.
They have Mercedes, they have all this stuff.
Yeah.
But that's not sustainable. And I think that unfortunately people think it's admirable,
Right.
but I think you're admirable.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's what you want out of life, you know? Do you want security and financial future for yourself, or do you want the things? Do you want the car? Do you want the bracelets? Do you want those kind of things? You know?
And I think that has to do with whether you're thinking about present time or the future.
Yeah.
I find that like when I became, it's funny, when my dad and I were building our portfolio, we were just in our little bubble. We had no idea how other investors acted, what other people did. It wasn't until, because then when you become a realtor, you see everyone.
Right. You see how everybody operates. And they all operate differently. Every investor works a little differently.
And some people you see and they're driving a Ford Taurus and they're freaking loaded.
Yeah.
And then there's other people who have a Mercedes and a 600 credit score.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, and so the instant gratification versus being able to think in futures, I think is the biggest thing. Like the people who come and go, I don't know if you get this, I'm assuming you do. Investors come to me and go, I want to buy a property and I want the cash flow to be as much as my job next year.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, you have that too, right? Where people
I haven't had anybody with that much of an expectation.
Well, I know, that's an exaggeration.
But yeah, I do have people who say, I want the numbers to be this way.
Yeah. And what do you tell them?
Well, we can try, but you're about 15 years too late. You know?
Yeah.
But I mean, usually it's something you have to build for longer than just one purchase or 1 year, you know?
Yes.
It's like often the numbers don't make sense in the very beginning, but you buy it anyway.
Yeah.
And then 5 or 6 years later, the rents come up a lot.
Yeah.
And then it all makes sense, you know, but you kind of have to jump in sometimes.
So there's this analogy, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Have you ever heard that?
No, but that's basically what I just said.
It's the same for real estate.
Yeah.
That okay, good. You have to start, right?
You have to start, yeah.
When did you actually start buying property?
Well, technically, my very first purchase, I was 21.
Yeah.
And I bought a condo.
Okay.
That I lived in.
Yeah.
Which later turned into a rental property.
When you moved out.
When I moved out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I moved out of it, I kind of back to back bought 3 more properties because it was the recession. So I scooped up a few when I moved out of that condo. So I went from having the 1 condo to having 4 properties or so.
This was like what year? What years?
Well,
2000.
I was 21. So I don't know. It was like 2006 to 2011.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good time to buy.
Yeah.
That's when we bought most of our stuff.
Yeah. Great time to buy.
When did you start working for Stonebridge?
So
brokerage.
when I first moved to Florida when I was 18, I rented an apartment from Donna and Brian as a tenant.
Did you know them?
No.
Okay.
So I was their tenant, and Donna asked me to start managing their rental properties.
Yeah.
And they had 50 doors.
This, by the way, Brian is our broker, and Donna's his wife.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was thrown into this world of property management at a young age, managing their rental properties and their tenants and things like that, and kind of learning how all that worked. And I did that for probably 2 years or so. And then
I think I forget that.
How could you?
No, I don't know. I remember that you met up with them, but you managed all 50 of their units for a couple of years? Okay.
For a couple of years, yeah. And it was a learning experience for sure. I learned a lot from that. And then moved on from that to actually managing an entire city block of downtown Clearwater.
Yeah.
And in that time got my license. So that was 2007 or so, 2006, 2007 that I actually got my license in. And right then it also happened to be the recession, so then I just started doing like 1 million short sales.
Yeah.
But I would say 2006, 2007, I actually became a realtor, but I was doing real estate before that.
Yeah.
By being property manager for commercial and residential.
So I've done a lot of property management, as you know, of my own places. Like, there is no way to become a property manager and not have kind of a holy shit moment
Right.
at the start of it. I think a lot of people probably quit when it went right. I mean,
Yeah.
I just assume, I don't know the stats on it,
Yeah.
but we know what happens. When you started doing that, did you go, this is a cool new game, or did you go like, what am I doing right now?
It was okay because I was really young and I had nothing else to do, and I was making money, you know, and I didn't realize that there were easier ways maybe at the time, and less dramatic ways to make money. But yeah, I mean, it was enlightening. There were phone calls where people are yelling at you and like you're trying to round up rent and they're not giving you rent because the heater doesn't work, and like, things happen.
Yeah.
So I think the moment when I decided, okay, this truly is not for me.
Yeah.
Property management, technically for others.
Yeah.
Was actually when I owned that condo.
Okay.
And I had to take over as board president because the condo association was failing.
Yeah. Okay. I remember this.
And I was pretty young. I was like 23. And I became the board president. And then I went and took the class for property managers for condo associations. You have to have certain licensing for that. So I learned all about how to run an HOA and thought, okay, well, maybe I could open up an HOA property management business. But being on the board, I realized that there is absolutely nobody who calls you who's happy. They only call you when they're not happy. So it's, you have to almost you have to enjoy being told everything's wrong every single day.
It's like being a cop or something, right?
Yeah. And I decided, okay, I'm not that good of a sponge. I can't take all that without kicking it back a little bit, So I was like, that's not the job for me, but that knowledge was really good for me to have as a board president. At least I knew how to manage a condo association. And those kind of things have really carried me forward in a lot of ways, not just as a realtor, but also as an investor. I know more about what I'm investing in than most people may.
I really think that having both sides of the coin, the realtor and the investor is huge.
Yeah.
We managed 230 units before I became an agent. So I thought I was kind of hot shit in a way of like, oh, I have all these properties.
Yeah.
And to an extent, it was good, but then you become a realtor and there's this whole other world, like the contracts, all the stuff that's going on behind the scene, how negotiation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think everyone should go get their realtor license, but it definitely...
Right. It helps. I mean, in some ways it helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does your portfolio look like now?
I have 15 units.
Okay.
Some of them are single family. Some of them are like single family with guest house. Others are duplexes, 6 units together, triplexes, that kind of thing.
When it's funny, we are like a perfect yin yang because you manage somebody else's properties.
Yeah.
And then you started buying your own.
Yeah.
I had my own properties and I actually did, I don't know if you remember this, I did a third party for a very short period of time when I started with Stonebridge.
Yeah.
I do not like that.
Right. It's harder with somebody else's property, I think.
It's way harder.
Yeah.
And like, you have to deal with the exchange level of your client, the owner,
Yes.
and go, the tenant is unhappy because this is happening.
Yeah.
And then the seller, or the owner says, I don't want to fix it.
Right.
Or do a crappy fix.
Yeah.
Or it costs too much or something like that. And even the communication, obviously you should always be nice to tenants, but it is different when you know, like if your own tenant is just a jerk to you.
Right.
You can make the decision, I'm done with you. You're going to get a 30 days notice tomorrow, but you can't do that. So
Right.
Do you ever think that you would manage your property, or have someone manage if you got to a larger amount, or you guys would?
I may. The problem is that I'm very particular about how everything is done.
Yeah.
In a way that nobody else probably understands or would do. I don't focus on the bottom line as much as many investors do. I focus on how to make the relationship and the property really fun and enjoyable. So I don't buy slummy stuff. Well, it's slummy in the beginning, and then we fix it and make it very cute, and rent it out to really nice, upstanding people who we almost always become friends with, and we fix everything promptly. And it's not all about, okay, well, fixing it that way is $500, fixing it this way is $200. We're just going to fix it the way that makes it good again.
Yeah.
So to do that level of landlording and have a property manager, I think I might lose money.
Yeah.
So the only way for me to give that level of property to somebody, I think, is for me to do it myself and have Sean there making all those repairs. Yeah, my husband does all the repairs and the renovations and everything so that we can have this high quality living and high quality tenant, But to give somebody else that job, I would probably have to lower my standards.
It's a tricky choice, and I think this is where the one size fits all thing is total BS for real estate investing. It's something I hate when people come to me and they're like, well, I follow this real estate guru and he says, do this. And I'm like, great. That guy's a billionaire. Like, why are you taking advice from him? You can't do that. You can't afford to do that. We couldn't have done our portfolio if my dad and I weren't doing the work. We eventually got a property manager because we didn't want to be in Kansas City any longer.
Right.
That was after we had done it for 15 years of hard labor.
Yeah.
That we went, okay, we don't want to do this anymore. We want to go back home. We can afford to.
Yeah. And your rents had probably changed so much within
Huge.
15 years that you could now do it and not really have any loss.
Huge.
And maybe that'll be the case for me in the future too.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, what's more important, your time or Sean's time?
Right.
Your wonderful husband who is the best soldier.
Yeah. And anytime I say, okay, I have this idea, he says, okay, I'll do it.
So I never actually kind of looked at it this way, but I keep on talking to people and interviewing people where it's spouses, our team members, right?
Yeah.
It's Michelle and I.
True.
It's Shane and Adam.
Yeah.
It's my parents. It's you and Sean.
Yeah.
It's Donna and Brian. It's all of these people. I don't think you can own real estate without a spouse. No, not really. But it is interesting. I think it's difficult that someone would do that by, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you would do this without Sean. I certainly couldn't do what we've done without Michelle.
Yeah, it would be a different story for sure. Nothing would be as nice.
Do you handle the tenants and he handles the physical properties in general?
Yeah, so I select the properties.
Yeah.
And then I tell him how I want it to look.
Yeah. Let me know when it's done.
Yeah, I find the finishes, like I pick the tile, I pick the kitchen, I pick all these things out and I design it and then he makes it happen. And then I find the tenant and get them moved in, and I'm usually the point of contact, except after a while they start to realize that Sean's really the guy who fixes everything and they get his number and they will contact him after a while because most of our tenants stay for years, you know? So most of them end up knowing both of us in the end.
Did you always operate the way that you do now where you make the places better, or did you ever have a time at the start of your career where they weren't as nice and had a different group of tenants?
No, we have always made them better because the way that we started was actually not in rentals. We flipped the first 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Even the house we live in today was a flip that we never sold. We were going to flip it and said, actually, this is kind of a nice backyard and layout for kids. Let's just stay in this one. So we never sold it. And then we bought 2 more flips after that, sold them, and then realized we didn't need the income immediately.
Yeah.
And the capital gains was not fun to pay on the flips.
Yeah.
And we would prefer to have something that was passive and long-standing. So then we started buying still dumpy places that needed renovating, but then just keeping them and renting them.
But you bought properties in locations that were good enough that they could support a nicer
renovation.
Right?
Yeah.
I find that is something that I see fairly regularly is if you just look at it on a spreadsheet, then you go, yeah, that neighborhood is bad. Like, you are never going to double your rents, or you double your rents after 15 years or something like that.
Right.
But probably the best or worst example of this is in Kansas City, we own some properties that were really, it was like dangerous neighborhood.
Right.
Right? Like, you know, when Archer, my son, was born, my dad did not want, and Archer would come with us to Kansas City. My dad was like, I don't want Archer in that neighborhood. And that's actually when we decided to sell those buildings because it was not safe. But we tried to make them nicer.
Yeah.
And then every once in a while, this, you know, cute young girl would come to take a look at the place, and we're like, do I say something?
Yeah.
Like, is it, I don't know if this is actually appropriate.
You weren't a realtor then. You could have said something maybe. Now you can't.
I know. But even just really from a thing of like, I'm renting properties and you can't get the nicer tenants.
Right.
I think that is one of the biggest mistakes a person could make. Unless you have, actually, I never see it work with the crazy bad properties. Even if you are rich and you can get a property manager,
Yeah.
it probably still doesn't work though, because
What do you mean financially monthly?
so like, even if you can afford a property manager and you don't have to have any of the personal headaches on your plate,
Right.
you still have an asset that's not going to appreciate that much.
I won't. Yeah.
That was a lesson that took us about 10 years to learn. I've said this, we bought 2 properties in 2007. 2006, in Kansas City. One of them's in a good neighborhood, one of them's in a bad neighborhood. They look the same on paper as a general ratios of expenses versus income and stuff like that. We sold them 10 years later within a year. So they're like a perfect case study.
Yeah.
The nicer one appreciated at more than double the rate.
Okay.
So whatever we thought, we were like, oh yeah, it's rough, but it's like doing well financially.
Yeah.
At the end of the time, no, the good property was such a better deal. And like, why would we ever deal with the crappy property?
Yeah.
If it's not even going to make us rich at the end, what was actually going to make us rich at the end is the place where, and like this place that we liked, it was right next to an art institute. And we had all these wonderful tenants. We have artwork in this house that is from our tenants back then.
Oh, wow.
My dad fixed the guy's toilet and he made a vase for him.
Oh, wow.
Right? Like, like that. I think you need that.
Yeah.
I certainly needed that because the bad tenants can be draining.
Definitely draining. Yeah.
If you don't have the good tenants.
Yeah.
On the other side.
Yeah. And I feel financially, I think in the long run, if you really look at the numbers, you make more if you do it my way, which is just to make it nice. I agree. And get the nice tenant in there because you have very little turnover. And every time you have turnover, you lose 2 months of rent.
At least.
At least, because it's going to be empty for a month while you rent it, plus maybe a month while you fix it.
You'll have less evictions if you have good tenants.
Yeah. And the good tenants often leave with very minimal repairs needed. You know, maybe I throw $500 into cleaning it and painting it, you know. But the bad tenants, I might have to replace all the floors, you know, all the countertops, and could spend thousands of dollars, and they're going to leave every year, you know. So even if the numbers look really great on paper, the long run, if I can keep a tenant happy in there for 5 years, they're happier, I'm happier, you know, and I make more money, I think, doing it that way in the long run. But you have to look at the long picture.
It's actually impressive that you immediately started like that because we did not start like that. We thought we could overcome the crap.
So I think the fact that I had that opportunity to manage some stuff
that was rougher
in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I had a kid and I had a job and I had zero extra time in my life to handle the drama, you know. I wasn't thinking about numbers. I was thinking about what I like aesthetically in real estate, you know. So I think all that combined just made me jump into a different real estate pool.
So what's next in terms of, do you guys, I mean, you just bought 9 units in the last year, right? 9?
Yeah.
Is that all done?
That's done. So those are renovated and fully leased.
Is that, okay, so you have 15 units.
Yeah.
Now that you have, okay, so you had 6 before that. Do you notice a decent difference in terms of what it takes to manage that many units or not? Not really.
Not really. Because we renovate them so much in the beginning.
Yeah.
So there's really no phone calls.
Yeah.
And I sort of have this weird golden rule that I won't buy anything to rent out to as a landlord unless I would be willing to live in it.
That's great. I haven't said it quite that way, but yeah.
So then I end up with, I mean, not to toot my own horn, but fantastic tenants who want a nice place to live, and they're really low drama, you know? So it's really not that big of a difference.
So you guys feel that you guys can get more units when you financially can, and it won't. Do you have like a number in mind of where you guys want to get to?
I mean, I've thrown some things out there, and Sean kind of laughs at me a little bit. I had a target that I've met, right? I had this idea that I wanted to basically match my income earned through commissions in real estate with income earned through passive rentals.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that I have done. And then I thought, okay, so what's the next thing? And we haven't exactly nailed down what that next thing is going to be. But I also am very slow about picking up new properties. I don't just go, okay, I have money, I'll buy something else. Mm-hmm. I wait and watch because I watch for everybody all the time,
Yeah.
the market, and I wait until something really catches my attention and I go, oh, I like that, you know, and then I'll get that one.
Yeah.
But it's not that I have to get a new one every year.
Okay. You're playing the long game.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, my biggest. I mean, the market is different than it was, but that is something that it gets very frustrating for me, for people who come looking for multifamily, is that they need it to be awesome.
Yeah.
Today.
Right. Yeah.
As opposed to you have it down.
Yeah.
Did you always operate that way, or did you have a mind shift sometime of like, oh, this doesn't work, to try to just make a bunch of money right away?
No, I always operated that way. It was never something that I thought, it's never money that we needed immediately.
Yeah.
You know, I've always been self-employed and Sean with me. So we have no retirement plan other than this, you know? So it was always a plan that these things will work for us in the future.
Yeah.
But not needed immediately. So it's never been, the monthly numbers were never the primary target. We didn't look at that as the primary goal.
You're smarter than most on that.
Thank you.
Because, I mean, like when I became a realtor, I was shocked. It's actually funny. When I started, I used to be intimidated by the Marcus and Millichap guys, and just like, it's a pretty like swanky, you know, kind of setup the way, you know, with CBRE and stuff like that. These are big boys doing big boy stuff over here, right? And I'm just this guy who had properties with his dad. And I'd go talk to them and I'm like, oh, I'm actually their senior. Like
most of them don't own real estate.
They don't own real estate.
Yeah.
And so the pamphlet, their OM, their offering memorandum, is like this thick. It's shiny.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a lot of fluff with like 2 pages of actual data.
Which is wrong, by the way. Most of the time you're like, oh, 4% for property management, $300 a month in maintenance for
30 properties.
30 units or something like that. And there's no mention of leasing fees. There's no mention of evictions. There's no mention of any of these things. And you just go, it's almost, you know, and by the way, maybe I'm picking on them. I really shouldn't. It's everywhere, and there's good and bad, you know.
I mean, it's hard to go in as an agent and actually tell the truth now and say, this is your outlook on this property for real, because your property will not sell, because every other agent is kind of making it look way better than the truth. So they'll pick all the other ones that are false advertising.
I actually had a year ago, I didn't get a listing on an 8-plex, and they're like, put together a valuation for us. And I go, this is what the property is worth, right?
Yeah.
And this is a couple years ago. It was a good time.
Yeah.
But they were like, what's this property management expense in here? We're self-managing. We want you to take that out of the spreadsheet. And I'm like, most people are gonna have a property manager. I guess you could take it out.
Could, yeah,
but,
just in case somebody else is going to self-manage.
But it still wasn't a good flow.
Yeah.
Right? And I honestly don't know how it's allowed some of the time, because I guess you could technically go try. But what's the use in trying to report it or something like that? But then you have a whole group of people who have a completely different idea of what someone should do. Here's something that I remember we agreed upon, is that you were very happy when you found out that I also think that the term cap rate is hilarious.
Yeah.
Right? Because all you have to do is lie about the expenses.
Yeah, it's very easy to manipulate that number.
Which is why, when I have a investor I bought a bunch of properties with that that's extremely sophisticated guy. And when I started working with him and I told him how I evaluate properties, I was like, I basically just do like the 1% rule. Just, the ratio between the rent
and the purchase
and
price.
the purchase price.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And he was kind of like, he couldn't have it because he's like the most incredible like math nerd.
Right.
Which so am I, but I was like, it doesn't, because all those other numbers are lying. I don't need to go, okay, good, divide this and multiply this and add this in. And then after a while, he's like, shit, it's coming out to basically the same numbers as this.
Yeah. The only thing that I've come across on some of my properties that makes it a little different is some of my properties have really high tax and insurance.
Yes.
Compared to others. And that one, that does need to be paid attention to on top of the 1%.
Agreed. Absolutely. I think that, and the guy I'm talking to about, he has properties in multiple states.
Yeah. So he's going to have different tax and insurance ratios
Totally.
on those. Yeah.
Totally. But like the way that I think everyone should start with what I just call the napkin numbers of just like, okay, good. Don't waste your time.
Yeah. I use that all the time.
Yeah.
Because I am browsing so many properties all the time.
You don't have time to do an analysis?
No, it takes an hour.
90 seconds. I have 90 seconds to decide if I'm going to swipe.
$400,000. Can I make anywhere near $4,000 a month on that in rent? No. Okay, done.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing that I admire about you and your family is your camper life that you have. So a couple years ago, you got a camper.
Yeah.
But you already traveled before then.
Yes.
How often do you guys actually go camping and see the world? I know you're like doing every national park in the country or something like that.
Yeah, that's our target. We've done about 26 of the national parks. And we go out for the summer for 3 to 5 weeks and drive really far sometimes in that camper. And then other times we use the camper around Florida, to kind of explore different parts of Florida and the different springs and things that you can find here.
Okay, so another book. Have you heard of The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss?
No, I haven't done that one.
It's good. I hope I get paid for the
plugs.
The plugs. So the basic idea is that there's an idea of wealth.
Yeah.
And then there's the actual things that wealthy people have.
Yeah.
So like, you don't actually want money, you want freedom, you want time, you want the ability to travel, you want the ability to go on a boat, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And so this guy, he kind of created this whole set of hacks of like, he traveled by standby and like he would like do these things so he could go to the Philippines or he could do the things that very wealthy people do.
Right.
But he didn't have the money. I actually think that you have a lifestyle that I think people who make even more money probably don't have.
Probably not.
Yeah. So then, isn't that a lesson to learn? I mean, I certainly I'm like, I see your pictures and I go, oh shit, they're in fucking Zion this week or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the important parts of life are not how fancy my house is or how fancy my car is or having a second home in some amazing place.
Yeah.
Because I like spending time with my kids and going out and seeing really cool parts of the world. And those cool parts are, for me, nature, not so much cities. So we go to the national parks, and that to me is my reward and my hobby for the hard work. I don't need to sit in a big mansion and pay a huge amount of property tax on that mansion. It doesn't bring me the same joy. And I also like the stress that I have very little stress in my life, that I don't have these big expenses that I have to make sure are covered every month, So yeah, I'm pretty frugal, I guess. But
isn't it funny that word almost has a negative connotation?
Yeah.
But it shouldn't.
Yeah, and people view my life as not frugal, probably, but I am. Like, that camper wasn't very expensive. It wasn't an Airstream, but it is great. It's new, and it takes us where we want to go, and we have the freedom to do it. We go out for 5 weeks to Banff and Yellowstone and Jasper and Wyoming and Zion, like you said, all these very beautiful places, and we get these amazing experiences with our kids.
And your kids are living a different life than a lot of people are living in 2024.
Yeah. So that's another part of our plan in our life that we set up when, we were 20, in our 20s, how do we make our life so we're not in an office all the time?
Yeah.
And so from the age of 23, I haven't been in an office. So I've just been working for myself as a realtor and real estate investor. And so has Sean, and it's unique. Our kids are homeschooled, so they're with us all the time, on top of the fact that we're constantly working together all the time. Mm-hmm. I don't know any other family that can do that without killing each other.
I remember, so when COVID started, and you're all homeschooling, right?
And I'm like, okay, I'm still doing the same thing I've been doing for the last 10 years.
I remember going, I admire Meghan so much. My kids have to get the fuck out of the house. Right? We don't know what we're doing.
It's a crazy balance, and sometimes my kids are screaming and I'm on the phone and it's $1 million deal, and I don't know, people just are okay with it,
You actually sometimes forget that other people have kids.
Yeah.
I'm never offended when someone else's kid is in the background.
Yeah.
And yet I'm mortified.
Right.
When it's my kid.
Yeah.
Like I'm the only one who has to deal with this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of understand it, because even when I call customer service for Target and I hear a parrot or a dog barking in the background, I know the person's working at home.
Yeah.
I kind of go, okay,
I think it depends on the job.
Yeah.
Because if it's like a bank or something, you have this idea of like what should be there.
Yeah.
But I think for like a realtor, actually maybe
we're being biased to ourselves.
We're totally being biased. I completely take it back. If I called a lawyer and there was a dog barking, I'd be like, well, I don't know.
But it works out.
Were you and Sean always on the same page on like, you have a unique lifestyle?
Yeah.
Is that was always in a like, we're homeschooling, we're traveling all over the place, we're not doing desk jobs, like that was always the plan. Is that right?
I would say that we aren't the best about setting out what our plan is.
Okay.
It just kind of formulates.
Then you're obviously compatible enough that it doesn't you don't need to sit down and have a hard conversation about it.
Yeah. It just kind of comes naturally, Yeah. It just kind of happened that way.
So you don't know what's next though for properties though at this point. It sounds like it's probably not high stress or high need from you.
Well, because like I said, I keep the expenses so low that there's no need, right?
So was it always like that, or at some point you started making more money? You didn't go out for a little while and go like, I'm gonna like buy some nicer stuff? That's awesome.
I'm telling you, I just am not a shopper. I'm just really not. I like buying properties. I like buying houses. I'm just really not a shopper.
It's very admirable, and I don't know what percentage of people it is that naturally have that don't have to learn the hard lesson.
Hold themselves back, yeah.
I've grown up pretty good in that sense, but when I started making a little bit more money, I was like, let's go to some nicer restaurants.
Well, yeah. But that's an experience.
It is, but I still think that like we started spending more money.
Yeah.
And kind of like there is a joy in trying to not give an F and being like, oh, I'll spend extra for the thing because I can.
Yeah.
And I did that for a few years and I was like, that does not make me more happy.
Right. It doesn't make me happy either.
It actually makes me feel dumb.
Yeah.
But it took a couple years because it's a little bit low integrity, but I was like, well, everyone else is like, YOLO,
right.
so treat yourself.
Yeah.
To then go, I have spent the equivalent of an extra commission this year.
Yeah.
On random stuff.
That wasn't necessary or wanted. Yeah.
that I didn't need that. And I think we've also had the conversation about, we see people's finances as realtors, and it's a little alarming.
Yeah. I think I have a little bit of shell shock from the recession, honestly.
Yeah.
And how many people's family homes I had to short sell for them, and how heartbreaking that was for them. I don't know how many short sales I did, but I would venture to guess over 100. And some of them were just, they've raised their kids in that house, and they had been there for 25 years, but they remortgaged it too high, and they couldn't handle the mortgage. And that really set a stage for me, I think. That was the very beginning of my real estate career, was all short sales and doing this for these people. And I never wanted to be in that situation. And so I've just been really stern about making sure that I can afford what I'm doing.
Good. Don't ever change that. I mean, it's not good for the people that had to deal with that, but a lot of people have to go through that themselves.
Yeah.
Before they could come to that decision.
Yeah.
You got to see it from a third point of view, and just go,
yeah,
well, I don't want to be
in that position.
And probably successful people.
Very.
Who then you go from making, 200 to 150.
Yeah.
With both of those numbers, when you're making 50 grand, seems like, oh my gosh, how could you ever be in problems? But if you are running the life at 200 grand,
right,
you can't, it's hard to go back, by the way.
Yeah.
Once you get used to, like get a massage every week.
Yeah.
Or
having an assistant, or having the big house, or whatever. I'm not making fun of you, but I'm just saying, it's hard to
no,
now
it's
I
just
have
funny.
to do my own grocery shopping or whatever,
I recently got a personal assistant, and you didn't know that until you came, and that she'd help set things up.
Yeah.
And so, but I will say, so I think that's a good segue, and maybe a justification.
Yeah.
But I handle my money two very distinctly different ways. Personally, I have almost no debt.
Yeah.
I have no car payments. Like when I make some extra money, I will actually pay off a portion of my house or my solar or something. Like I do not like personal debt at all.
Yeah.
I am willing to take on debt and expenses to grow business.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And so I don't know if you like, for your properties.
Yeah.
Do you use debt, or how? I mean,
I try
how much?
not to.
Okay.
My outlook on that is that it's okay to.
Yeah.
If the numbers make sense.
Yep.
Again, I'm very stern about making sure that I can afford it, because I never want to be in that position where I have to short sell something.
Yeah.
But if I can avoid the debt, in the long run, it makes me so much more money.
Yeah.
Because you can write off the interest as a tax deduction. That's great. Mm-hmm. But it's not as much of a deduction as what you're actually paying in interest,
Yes.
So I'm just working for the bank, essentially. And I'm doing my own management, and I'm purchasing it, and I'm cleaning it up, and I'm putting the tenant in there so that the bank can make money. I want that money today.
Yeah.
I don't want that money in 30 years while I've been working for the bank for 30 years or 15 years for that mortgage. So I try to avoid that. Also, the closing costs when you purchase are higher when you have a mortgage by thousands. So I can save $10,000 on every closing by just not having the mortgage.
Do you have any mortgages?
Yeah.
On most or some or what? Approximately how much? 50?
Not many.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, but you've also worked your ass off to get into a position where you could do that.
Yes. I've worked very hard for very many years.
Yeah.
And like I said, kept my expenses very low.
Yeah, that's good. I also think that, honestly, that sounds fantastic. Although actually I don't know we don't have that many mortgages on our properties, but it also took a while. We did for a while, and then we sold some buildings, and we used that to pay off some of the mortgages.
Yeah, I have done that too.
On the others, I think that your investment goals have a lot to do with whether or not you should take on debt or not.
For me, it does.
I think that debt for me is like a business opportunity.
Yeah.
So if you're like, I don't care if I work myself into the ground, like I'm trying to get 10,000 units kind of a thing.
Right.
You're going to need debt.
You have to.
So, and I think that everyone's different. I think that debt is better for someone who you always have to pay your debt. Like you have to be able to afford it. But if you're younger and you're trying to build something,
Yeah.
I think that debt makes more sense than like someone who's in a position where like, good, now I am fully planning for retirement. I am trying to get, does that make sense?
Yeah. I'll say that I would be way more accepting to debt if I didn't want this life that I have chosen for myself, which is homeschooling my kids and traveling and having this ease and freedom, you know? But I know that if I have the debt and some property is not working,
Yeah.
I need to work more to help make sure that that property succeeds, right? And that means that I may have to put my kids in a traditional school and I may not get to travel as much. So it all really focuses around what I really want out of life, which is I want time with my kids and I want to play, you know? And so that makes it so that I don't want to have these obligations. So I try not to make the properties an obligation. That's what it kind of goes backwards to.
That's perfect. Have you, okay, so there's this story based on what you were saying that you have a certain lifestyle.
Yeah.
And you would have to change that lifestyle, right? So the story goes, a guy from like Wall Street goes to this small fishing village when he's on vacation, and he sees this guy who's doing a really good job, just some fishermen catching fish. And he goes, wow, that's amazing. And he goes, yeah, but how long did it take you to catch all this? And he goes, a couple hours. And he goes, oh my gosh, you can make so much more money if you stayed out and fished all day long. And he goes, well, what would I do then? And he's like, well, then you could make enough money to get a couple more boats and get a crew. And you go, well, and then what would happen? And he goes, well, then you could start selling it to larger markets. And then what would happen? Well, then you could, open new chains in different areas. And then what would happen? And the story goes, you can do it longer. He goes, then someday you could become a publicly traded company. And then what? Then you could sell it and make millions of dollars. And then what? Then you could retire and move to a small fishing village where you only work a couple hours a week and enjoy drinking with your family at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So just cut to the chase.
Right. So let's just do it now.
And do the thing that makes you happy.
Yeah.
I actually want to travel more, and I definitely look to you guys. Did you always do that, by the way?
Yeah. It's always been, I can't help myself. I'm constantly planning the next trip. It's my hobby.
That's a good hobby.
Yeah. So even before the kids, we would go places often.
And then you just, when the kids were born, you just went, okay, kids, you're in this type of family.
Yeah.
So here we go.
Like we went to Hawaii with Finley when she was 4 months old. That was a long plane flight.
Most of it's not plane flight. So you guys travel a lot.
Yeah, we
driving,
do both.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say we do both because sometimes we can't get there fast enough. Like we want to go to California. I went to California's national parks last year.
Yeah.
And we had the baby. So we had Summit, who was 4 months old, and I didn't want to drive 30 hours in a camper with him.
Yeah.
So we flew.
That's another thing I almost forgot to touch on. You're a mom of 3 kids doing this.
Yeah.
I would say that there's a lot of people who don't think that what you've created is possible because they're a mom.
Probably.
But you just went, screw it.
Yeah, I don't really think about it.
Okay, well then there you go. Don't overthink, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I work hard and that's my personality and it's turned into something. I'm very persistent.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I'll just keep going at something. Even if it takes forever, I'll just keep doing it until I get where I wanted to get to. And eventually it gets to something good.
I feel like that is continuing to decline in society.
Yeah. People want instant gratification for sure. Yeah.
And they go online and they see like Instagrammable lives and they think that that's what they should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's bullshit.
Well, yeah, it's a lie. I mean, it's only for a second. You don't know what's happening in the rest of the scene, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, even my life, right? We were at the Christmas dinner for Stonebridge last week, and I said something to Tom and Jennifer about the truth of my life, right? Like, oh yeah, my kids, they fight all the time. You know? And Tom goes, really? Like, I would never guess that based on what I see on Facebook. I'm like, yeah, of course, Tom. I'm a normal person. I have 2 girls.
I turn off the camera before
But I'm not going to share that on Facebook, you know?
Yeah. It is kind of a funny thing to try to balance because you want to show good things.
Yeah.
Because you want to be like, hey, like, you know, I want to inspire people. So I don't necessarily want to dwell too much on.
Right. Of all my hardships, right?
But if you maybe disingenuous is too hard, but I think that there's a lot of people that they could be doing more, except for that what they see seems so out of reach.
True. Yeah.
Like, you know, there's a real estate guru who is like, try to make $1 million on your first deal doing these things. And I just go, what you're going to accomplish is just, you're going to stop people from getting started.
Yeah.
That's the biggest crime.
And that is something that's very hard for people anyway.
Yeah.
Just to do it. And I would say that is probably where I am a little bit opposite. I just start doing something before I even learn about it. And that's actually how I learn the best, is I'm doing it. I don't really learn that much from books, you know, or lectures.
Yeah.
I just jump in and start doing it. And then along the way I go, okay, that doesn't work, or this does work. And I shift, you know?
I admire that about you.
Thank you.
And I remember that when we, when I became a realtor and you were my mentor, I would ask you questions and you were kind of like, yeah, like, go do it. Like,
just see what happens.
Just to see what happens. And my vice is on the other side. I'm book smarts. I read a different book every week, and I'm not going to stop that. But sometimes someone has to be like, get the F out of your head.
Yeah, and just go try it.
Because then whenever I do it, I realize, I learned like 10 times more.
Yeah.
From the mistakes I made.
Yeah.
Than I would have ever made. Which is why, from a real estate investing thing, you have to go buy a property.
Yeah. And it's not always learning from mistakes. Sometimes it's learning from success.
Totally.
I would say, even though I didn't really know what I was doing, I've had very little failure.
It's pretty easy to overcome what happens. As long as you don't, I'd say buying in a bad area.
Yeah.
That one's tough.
Yeah.
But like, you bought good properties.
Yeah. Except that first condo. That one, it had a moment that I had to get it through.
Because of why?
Because I didn't realize that you are really effective your group when you're in an HOA. You are, you know, you are taking on that HOA's finances and what they are willing to do as far as property maintenance. You can't just do what you want.
Yeah.
And then the recession hit on top of that.
Yeah.
So then it did go underwater for a while. And some people would view that as a failed property, but I didn't ever sell it in that
You just don't sell it when that
state.
happens.
Yeah, exactly. So I took on the responsibility of being the board president for that HOA so I could fix their finances. And then I rented out the unit until the recession was over. And by then I had handled the HOA finances and the recession was over and I didn't really make money.
Yeah.
Maybe $10,000 or something, you know, but I didn't lose anything. But if I didn't ever perceive that as a failed property because I didn't sell it in the low, you know, so you just have to ride it out or get it to the point where it's not a failure.
So that's one of the things that I think is a detriment to, like, it's actually nice. You don't sell it.
Yeah.
And you're fine. If you have stock and you see that you've quote unquote lost $30,000 this week,
Yeah.
it's devastating. And you're like, and then you're like, oh shit, I don't want to lose another 30 grand. I'm just going to sell.
Yeah.
You just need to persist.
Yeah. Don't watch that Zestimate too closely. Just keep going.
Whenever, you know what's funny is how quickly people forgot that Zillow had to lay off a third of their entire company.
Yeah, Zillow is a failed investor.
Totally. I was so happy, and I thought it was so hilarious when they went, we're going to start buying investment properties based upon our estimates. Oh, it turns out that we're the worst investor. Thank you.
Yeah.
Officially. What's funny is people have already forgotten about that.
Yeah. It was very short-lived.
I know, because then it's just like, okay, fine. But I constantly remind people that.
Yeah.
The second they go, well, this estimate says this, and I go, I want to remind you about when their stock price went down 40% or whatever it was, and they had to lay off a third of their company because they lost $500 million or $3 billion in a year's time or something.
Yeah. I got a lot of joy out of selling Zillow-owned homes to people for less than what Zillow paid for their own house.
Yeah.
That was fun.
We had that. That's right. I did one of those too. And it was funny because, gosh, that was so funny. That was my cousin. We put in an offer. They didn't respond. It was like a weird thing. And they said no. And then we said, hey, what's happening? And then they said yes.
Yeah.
Like, so anyways, yes, that doesn't matter. And if you buy good enough properties in good enough areas, you don't have to worry at night. You know it's going up.
Yeah, it'll always come back.
Even if it's like, oh, well, what's the interest rates? Who cares? I'm not selling it right now.
Yeah. But real estate has cycles, you know, and some of those cycles can be really extreme, and the extreme ones take longer, 20 years. But if your process is long and you don't need the income this year, then you just wait it out.
Yeah, which is what you're doing and I'm going to do. And by the time that you're nearing whatever retirement, although you're kind of already living the life that most people are looking for retirement,
yeah,
right?
Probably, yeah.
You travel a bunch.
Yeah, I mean, I still work a lot.
You work a lot.
Yeah, but I get to do also what I want. So
I think that's very admirable, and I look to you on a very regular basis of the way that you have set up your life compared to people we know who maybe they make more on a, you know.
Oh, for sure, there's people who make more.
For sure.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people I know who make 2, 3, 4 times what we make, and I would not trade with them.
Yeah.
Because they're stuck. And they can't invest, by the way. I know people who make $500,000 a year who don't think they can invest because they have
too much overhead.
That's how much they spend in life.
Yeah.
You know, they I don't know, just stuff. It's very easy to spend.
Yeah. Yeah. So, because I don't buy the stuff. Like I said, I'm not a shopper.
Yeah.
You know, how people get that excited feeling when they buy a car or they buy a house or they buy a bag or a phone.
Yeah.
I get that out of buying a property, I guess. You know, that's where my joy is. And traveling with my kids. I'll spend way too much on a trip.
But it's worth it. And you'll remember that forever.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to remember when that bag from Gucci doesn't exist in a couple of years or something like that. But you're going to remember the time you spent in Yosemite or something like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. For sure.
Well, I hope this wasn't too bad. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, it's fun.
You really are an opinion leader to me. And I think that I really wanted your people to see more of you because you keep your head down.
Yeah.
And you don't go, look at me.
Thanks.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think that you're actually more inspirational than most of the people who are like, oh my God, like I'm amazing and look at my nice car and stuff like that. They don't have the happiness and the family and the life that you have created, right?
Maybe, I don't know.
Well, fine. You
thank you.
continue to be nice and modest. But when I look around and you go, that guy's rich, but he's been divorced 3 times. That guy,
Yeah.
and you go down the line of people.
Yeah.
And then you go, good. Family, check. All the different dynamics of their lives and things like that. Check, 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 check.
Yeah.
That's what's meaningful, right?
Yeah. Yes, I think so. For me.
Well, good. Thank
Yeah.
you very much, Meghan.
Thank you, Ben.